What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Driver Mod. We've got another GT350 video for you today. We just unloaded the car, the trailer. We just got back from Arkansas. We went on a 3-day event with Red Mirror Events, their first inaugural Ozark Mustang Mountain Rally. We had about 60 cars out there and we had a fantastic time. We were out there with Whiskey Group, which is the Wild Wild West group. We are the Fast group. Had a great time. Cleaned house at the banquet dinner game festivities. Now, the reason I'm making this video is we just hit 30,000 miles on the car while we were out there, and I wanted to make a video on a lot of the common failures of the GT350 that you, the average DIY person, could do yourself and fix. Now, I'm not going to get into like the AC issues with, these are common fixes to fix common problems on the GT350 platform. Again, that you don't need, a lot of special tools, a lot of tools to do. So something that can be done very quickly or somewhat quickly by the average DIY individual. So again, we're not going to get into heavy engine issues where, the engine's got to get replaced or something like that. We're not going to get into the AC common issues like the AC compressors, the AC lines and the evaporator, which are all prone to failing because you're going to need special tools to evacuate and recharge the system. So the first issue that we're going to talk about that is common to all the GT350s is actually a clicking noise. Now, the clicking noise comes usually from the rear of the car. You'll notice it at low speeds. And the fix for that is simply to check the torque on your lug nuts. If these wheels are not torqued, which the torque spec is 150 foot-pounds, but if you just zap them on with an air gun and you don't check the torque on those, they are prone to making a clicking noise. And you'll hear it mostly at low speeds. So that's something that anybody should be able to fix, and it's an issue that is super common on these cars when the wheels are not installed properly. The second issue we're going to talk about that you can easily fix on the GT350 is an exhaust rattle. Now, these cars do make a lot of unusual noises, which are actually completely normal for this car. Piston slap in the light load from 2,000 to 3,000 RPM, that's completely normal, especially when the car isn't fully warmed up. But the noise we're talking about comes from under the car and comes at various RPM ranges, and that is an exhaust rattle due to the mid-pipe vibration damper, which you can see. You can see it right there. It sits right in front of that flex tubing or flex piping on the mid pipe, and the nuts on those are prone to backing off due to the vibrations of the engine being resonated through the exhaust and causing that damper to actually loosen up, and you'll hear just a loud ass vibration in various RPM ranges when you're driving the car. The simple fix for that is if you catch it before that thing falls off, just tighten up the nut, maybe put some Loctite on it, and you're good to go. Now, another common failure on these cars is actually the starters. They are exposed to a lot of heat, especially if you track the cars and then you get off the track and you just let the car bake, or you drive it hard on the street, autocross it, whatever. Whenever you drive the car hard and it gets very hot, you just park it and let it sit, don't pop the hood, all that leads to premature starter failure. Starter is very simple to get to. I just jack up the front of the car, remove the passenger front wheel, and it's, a 30-minute job if you know what you're doing. But again, that's a very common failure on these cars, and most DIY guys can handle doing something like that. So that's our third common failure that you can repair yourself. The next two failures have to do with the engine and affects the drivability of the engine, and you will notice these whether it's with a check engine light, rough idling, stalling, extended starting. Both of these can cause this issue, but then depending on the codes that you get will determine which one you go after. The first one is going to be here. These are your cam phaser solenoids, and those adjust for the cam timing, or they send a signal to the phaser solenoid to tell it how much oil pressure to let in or out of the phaser. And what happens is these wires, because they're bound so tight on this harness, this one's not as bad, but it's usually that exhaust one that goes bad first. I've loosened mine up to give it more slack. What you can do is you can release this clip right here that has the harness, and like this. I must have snapped that one back in when I was doing something, but I usually just let it sit like this, and that way these wires don't get kinked and pulled tight at a sharp angle. And what it causes, it disrupts the signal with the pins and the electrical connection, which causes the computer to lose control of the cam timing on that bank. Usually it's the driver's side that we see the most failures because it's right up against this intake box. So usually it's the driver's side, and the code you'll get is something to do with, you know, open circuit, you know, cam phasing. And if you see a fault with cam phaser codes, especially on the driver's side, you know, whether it's the exhaust or intake, that's where I would start with diagnosis. And to fix the issue, you're gonna take the connector off. You're gonna get a brand new pigtail from Ford, which is the connector with the wires already installed in the connector, and then they give you some, you know, some wiring, and you just simply remove this connector, cut the wiring, splice the new one in, connect it, clear the code, and you should be good to go. The other issue with the engine that causes some drivability, some hard starting issues, is the cylinder head temp sensor. I've had this fail on my car. I have not had these fail on my car yet, but I've seen it a number of times on cars that I've worked on, fixed, repaired. That's super common. The cylinder head temp sensor is back here on the back side of the intake manifold. You can access it by removing this plate inside the battery box or taking the intake manifold off. Both will get you right there. When that fails, you'll notice the cylinder head temperature reading fluctuating a lot more than usual, as well as the water temperature. There is no coolant temp sensor on the GT350. It infers the data based on the oil temperature and the cylinder head temperature, and infers the coolant temperature. So that coolant temperature that you see on your gauge under the tack, that is inferred data. That may start acting erratically. You may get an extended start where it'll crank over like normal, but it won't fire because it's basically in limp mode at that point. And you may also get rough idling. Sometimes it'll stall. I've had that fail on me, and it did all those. You know, once it does fire up, it may shoot a bunch of smoke out the back, and that's all the raw fuel that got dumped in when it was trying to start. But again, you know, $40 sensor, and you can be back on the road. And one other common issue with these engines is oil leaking down by the oil filter, specifically due to the oil pressure sensor. I've seen it happen both ways, where the oil actually just goes through the sensor just over time. Oil just somehow it seeps into the back side of the sensor and just it's basically pressurized, and it comes out of the harness. And then on mine, what actually happened was the sensor had actually backed off over time. We're at 30,000 miles. I've never messed with it, and I noticed I started to have an oil leak. Now, I still have the spin-on oil filter, and I thought, okay, maybe the filter's finally come loose. I've never had the filter come loose on me. I torque it to spec every time. I check it periodically, but I've never had an issue with the filter. I get down there, I take the wheel off, and I put my hand on the filter, and it's tight. It definitely was not coming from the filter, so I cleaned the area off and noticed I had oil coming from the oil pressure sensor. And I'd seen this before, and I was like, dang it, you know, I need a sensor. But just by chance, I put my ratchet on it, and it was like hand tight. So this thing had just slowly backed out over time through like heat cycles, vibration, all that kind of stuff. And I figure probably in the next, 100 miles, that thing would have blown out the side of the engine, and I would have shot oil all over the place, and who knows what would have happened with the hot exhaust right there. So again, super common issue. If yours is if it's leaking from that area, check the sensor, make sure it's tight. If it is tight, then you need to replace the sensor. If it's not tight, tighten it up and you'll be good to go. I tightened it up. I just did, again, 700 miles of hard rally mountain driving with Whiskey Group, and it didn't leak anymore after that. So we got lucky there. Well, anyways, guys, that's going to conclude today's video on the common problems and easy fixes for the GT350. Appreciate it if you would subscribe if you haven't already. definitely share this video with other GT350 owners, as I know it has a lot of valuable information. I know it didn't seem like much. When you're talking about the GT350s and how a lot of them are out of warranty now, being able to do any of these repairs on your own will definitely save you a lot of money and give you peace of mind that the job is getting done right. Definitely comment down below if you have any other questions or anything you're seeing that, and see what if I've seen it before. Again, these are just like the wave tops, like the top 5-6 problems that I see on these cars and how to fix them. There's a obviously it's man-made, anything can happen, but I just wanted to get a good baseline to give you a good direction of where to follow, where to go if you do have some sort of drivability issue or you're experiencing some sort of noise or whatnot. I definitely thank everyone that's been a long-time follower of the channel, and any new subscribers, I greatly appreciate you as well. Definitely get out and enjoy the GT350 and everything that it has to offer. It is a truly special car and the greatest Mustang of all time. There is no debating that.